Hello, boys and girls. This is the read aloud of Starry Messenger by Peter Sis, going along with task number 11. This should be done on Tuesday the 24th. We used the same book yesterday on task number 10 when we talked about how people's beliefs had changed over time. Today we're going to be reading the same story, but we're going to be looking for some of the observations that Galileo made and why the telescope was important to Galileo's life. So those are the two questions that we are trying to answer after reading today's story. Okay, I think Nala's decided to move on. So, Starry Messenger by Peter Sis. And again, remember you can pause at any time to look at the pictures and the notes on each page and go back. Parents always ask questions. That always helps a lot. Starry Messenger, a book depicting the life of a famous scientist, mathematician, astronomer, philosopher, and physicist. For hundreds of years, most people thought the Earth was the center of the universe, and the sun and the moon and all the other planets revolved around it. They did not doubt or wonder if this was true. They just followed tradition. Then, one man looked at the sky and wondered, what if things are not as everybody believes them to be? Maybe the Earth and other planets move around the sun. He wrote down his observations, but he did not talk about them, and he did not publish them for a long, long time. He knew he could not prove they were true. It would take someone else to do that. In those days, Italy was a country where many great artists, writers, musicians, and scholars lived. In the city of Pisa, a little boy was born with stars in his eyes. His parents named him Galileo. And this is the person that we're going to be writing about, Galileo. Galileo thrived and he grew. In many ways, he was like any other healthy child. But he was more curious than most, and stars were always on his mind. So he reminds me a lot of you guys with all of his questions and curiosity and wanting to learn. He studied mathematics and physics and turned out to be a very bright young man who entertained and amused people with his brilliant experiments and observations. Galileo is our star, the people would say. And we actually looked at this when we did our engineering unit. This is the Leaning Tower of Pisa, and you guys made observations and did experiments, and you are mathematicians as well. Then, one day, Galileo heard about a new instrument for seeing things far, far away. Remember, instruments can be another word for tools, just like our math tools and science tools. He figured out how it worked and made one for himself. Then, he turned it to the sky. And here's some pictures of him trying it out, figuring out how can he use it to look at things in the sky better. Night after night, he gazed through his telescope, That's the tool that you can use to see things far away that we're going to be writing about. He gazed through his telescope and wrote down everything he observed or saw. Then he published his observations in a book which he called the Starry Messenger. And here are some things that he saw, some of the notes that he took with pictures, so that way he could remember all the different things he could observe in the sky. Galileo was amazed by what he could see with his telescope. People read Galileo's book, and they became inspired. He made maps of the heavens, or the stars, and dedicated the 4 newly discovered stars of Jupiter to his patron and ruler, the Grand Duke of Tuscany, Cosimo II. And here he is presenting this to the Grand Duke. So here's a picture that he drew, kind of showing Jupiter, which is one of the planets, and its moons. And this is something that he mapped out. Soon, Galileo was famous. More and more people celebrated the stars. They celebrated Galileo and his discoveries with statues and parades and spectacular events. And here are some events that they held celebrating all the new discoveries. His fame grew, and the celebrations became extravaganzas. But now, the church began to worry. Galileo had become too popular. By upholding the idea that the earth was not the center of the universe, he had gone against the Bible and everything that ancient philosophers had taught. He had gone against the church. Galileo was ordered to stop believing what he could see with his own 2 eyes. He was summoned to appear before the highest ruler of the land, the Pope. So this is kind of what you should have written about yesterday, about how people used to believe that the earth was the center of the universe and the sun and stars moved around us, whereas he discovered that that was not true, and that the sun was actually the middle of the universe and everything moves around it. Which people find out new things all the time, and if people didn't learn, then we wouldn't have nearly as many things as we do today. And that's something to always keep in mind, that we always have to admit that sometimes we're wrong, and new tools like telescopes are going to keep coming out, and we're going to keep learning new things. And it's okay to be wrong as long as you have proof. Like his proof was his own 2 eyes using the telescope, because a long time ago, they didn't have telescopes, so they didn't know any better. But now, they do. Galileo was afraid. He knew that people had suffered terrible torture and punishment for not following tradition, and it could happen to him. So here are some pictures of people being tortured and punished, and that's what he was afraid of, since he had made new discoveries. He was tried in the Pope's court, and everyone could see that the stars had left his eyes. Galileo was condemned to spend the rest of his life locked in his house under guard. But he still had stars on his mind, and no one could keep him from thinking about the wonders of the skies and the mysteries of the universe. And even when he went blind, no one could keep him from passing his ideas along to others, until the day he died. But the ideas lived on. So even if people tell you to, stop asking questions and wondering and being scientists, you can't help it but to ask questions and wonder and want to learn more. And that's what he did. He kept on learning and he kept on trying to find out new things. Finally, more than 300 years later, the leaders of the very church that had punished Galileo Galilei, which is his last name, pardoned him. And they admitted that he was probably, in fact, surely and absolutely right. So it just took the church a while to admit that they were wrong and that his ideas and inventions were in fact correct. Because even though he had the telescope, it took them a while to come up with even more tools and ways to prove that his ideas were correct, and that the ideas that were followed for a long time weren't true anymore. That's the end of that book. So, think about some observations that Galileo made. He loved learning about the stars. What did he see in the stars? And why was the telescope important to Galileo's life? Do you think he still would have made the same discoveries if the telescope was not invented yet? What do you think would have been different if he were alive today and he had all the tools that we had? All right, if you guys have any questions, let me know. Good luck, and I can't wait to see you all soon. Bye.